You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you'll receive tips and techniques to advance yourself. I'm your host, Dom Brightman, and every week we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. On a quick side note, be sure to check out Going North the book. It's available in ebook, audio, as well as paperback form for those who love to read a traditional book. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, are you thinking about your next level in your career? Are you networking, but the effort is not translating into results? Or have you come to realize that who you know is more important than what you know? If you answered yes to any of these, then you are in the right place and not the left place. Our speaker was named one of Forbes' top 25 networking experts, is the author of 4 books, including the internationally recognized The 11 Laws of Likability and her latest bestseller, The Connector's Advantage, both of which are available today. A regular in the media on leadership and workplace effectiveness, our speaker has appeared on CBS, NBC, NPR, and the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Working Mother, and Forbes, among a boatload of others. And when our speaker is not engaging audiences, she is an expert chauffeur to her wonderful kids and is a skilled walker of her 2 rescued dogs. And she is known for helping people work better together and advance their individual impact. Please help me welcome the wonderful author, speaker, and woman who just learned how to ride a bike, Michelle Tillis Lederman. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, doing great that we have you on the show. It's great to add another interview to your highlight reel and have you come on and talk about your new fabulous book.
I would love to talk about my new fabulous book. A great intro. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's usually one of the better parts of the show. Then it all goes downhill, dad jokes ensue, and then there's some knowledge and some inspiration, and then, of course, a pun, and then I was the best with you. Yes, indeed. Well, we're in the wonderful generation where folks need to learn how to connect. So you had a first book, The 11 Laws of Likability, that focused on networking. So how does this book now, The Connector's Advantage, build upon your previous book?
It's a great question. Actually, my brother-in-law walked into my office one day and asked me the exact same question. Because The 11 Laws of Likability is, the subtitle is Relationship Networking, because people do business with people they like. And I didn't want the word networking in there because it's a yucky word. It has the word work in it. Who wants to do it? But, for SEO, the publisher's like, you have to have the word networking. And so that's why I came up with that phrase, relationship networking. And that book is what we do before, during, and after a conversation to enable connection, to enable likability. And when he walked in, he asked me the question, what's the difference between networking and connecting? I said, well, networking is something you do, but a connector is someone that you are. And so this book, The Connector's Advantage, builds on those laws of likability because we need those concepts foundationally to understand how to interact. But when we want to become a connector, somebody who is relationship-focused and driven in the way in which they approach life and business and people, then you have to kind of get into the mindset. And so I talk about 7 mindsets to shift how we think, how we act all the time, not just when we're doing this thing networking.
And that's one thing I do love about the book, is that you actually dig deep into the mindset, and that's kind of a buzzword nowadays. So mind diving deeper into the 7 lucky mindsets?
Yes, of course. So I'll list out the 7 mindsets, and you can maybe pick 1 or 2, and we can go into a little bit more detail on them. So connectors are open and accepting. They have a clear vision. They believe in abundance. They trust. They are social and curious, they are conscientious, and they have a generous spirit. Those are our 7 mindsets of a connector. There's also 7 levels of being a connector, which we can also go into. But do you want to pick a mindset or two for us to dive a little deeper into?
Oh, of course, indeed. So connectors believe in abundance. That's probably one that folks need to work on, heck, me included.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that people find the most challenging, myself included. When we think about abundance, the opposite is scarcity. And a lot of times we make decisions out of fear because of scarcity. When I was back in my finance days, I'm a recovering CPA. I spent 10 years in finance. And when I started out, there was one woman towards the top of the ladder. Not at the top of the ladder. She wasn't yet partner. There was no female partners in this accounting firm, but there was a senior manager who was a woman. And boy, did she not reach back to help other people. Because at that time, there was only room for one woman towards the top, and by golly, it was going to be her. So there was no women helping women because of the scarce mindset that there was only room for one. An abundant mindset actually says, not that everything's wonderful. We live in reality, but we believe in a possibility of a better reality. So abundant thinking would be like, just because there's only one now doesn't mean there can't be more down the road. With abundant thinking, we don't compare ourselves against other people and judge ourselves in relation to them. We look to see and understand the value that we are bringing. And so it enables us to make decisions from a place of there is enough, right? There is enough for all. And I can give credit to all, and I can partner with all, and I don't have competitors. I have strategic alliances rather than it's you or me.
And it's good that we're actually getting away from the whole one woman at the top sort of thing nowadays in 2019, because it's like there's enough room for everybody. And I mean, yeah, it's easier said than done, but it's good we're actually moving away from that and allowing space for more folks to actually see the opportunities and actually create more opportunities.
Yeah, that's just one example. I mean, we feel scarcity in all areas of our life, whether it's financial scarcity, scarcity of customer, client, friend even. It's interesting. Even with podcasts, one of the people who contributed to this section of the book is another podcaster, and he used to say, I was afraid to make introductions of my guests to other podcasters because then how's my podcast special? And what he realized was what made it special was him, and the way in which he interviewed somebody, and not necessarily just the guest. And I thought that was a really great shift from scarce to abundant thinking.
Amen to that, indeed. And it's always great to share because it's like the guests, they get their voice out there to an extended audience. You get to build relationships with the fellow podcaster. Heck, even J.C. Preston, he actually connected me with the TEDx speaker Saba Ali, and we actually connected on mutual ground because we're both the young millennials trying to make a positive difference in the world. So that is really awesome indeed. Awesome indeed. And I guess that really comes from a trust aspect too, because that's something that's really big nowadays.
Yes. I mean, trust is huge. It's so interesting. If the listeners out there are thinking about how would they define the word trust? Would they even say it's a noun, a verb, or an adjective to be trustworthy? So trust is this amorphous concept, but yet we all know it when we feel it, and we know it when we don't. And so I talk about the 4 pillars of trust, being authenticity, vulnerability, transparency, and consistency. And I believe you have to give trust to get trust. And that's a big part of being vulnerable. With authenticity, you can't connect to somebody who isn't being real, right? So we go into a little bit of depth there, but one of the best definitions I got for the word trust is when I did an activity with a group, and they said trust is the expectation of predictability. And I thought, what a great, simple definition of the word trust. The expectation of predictability. Now, I had another group who did the same exercise asking for a definition of the word trust, and they had a much more complex but also interesting answer. So I'm going to read it to you. Trust is a feeling or connection that creates a bond rooted in certainty, reliability, and consistency. There is no timeline for creation or destruction. It is fluid. And I thought that was a fascinating idea that trust is fluid. I also think trust is situational. So do you have any pets?
Oh, no pets.
No pets. Okay. So for all those dog lovers out there, they'll relate to this one. When we think about trust being situational, I trust my dog to bark if there's an intruder. I trust my dog to protect me with its life. I do not trust my dog if I leave my food unattended. Right? So we trust situationally. I can trust my friend to tell me if I look good in a certain outfit, but I don't trust her to give me career advice. Right? So we trust situationally. And we are always doing micro actions that are either building or breaking trust. And we need to understand those nuanced behaviors that are contributing to either the building, the creation, or the breaking, the destruction of trust. And I also go into how you can rebuild and restore trust when it is broken.
Oh. That was a great example indeed. It's like, yeah, don't go to your stylist for dental advice, right? Oh, man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But yeah, I guess reliable predictability, right? Is that the definition that you gave for trust, at least the first one?
That was actually a definition given by a group. So when I go out and do trainings with groups, a lot of times organizations are struggling with trust. And so when we do a team building or a communications or a management leadership program, we might have a module on trust. And in that module, I do an activity where I break the group up into teams, and one of the groups is assigned come up with a definition of the word trust. And in all the years I've been doing this, I have never gotten the same definition twice. But the two definitions that I gave you were two different groups that just really resonated and stuck with me.
Amen to that, indeed. Amen to that. I guess that's like one of the most beautiful things about, I guess in a way, speaking from stage and just learning from other groups is like you get all these creative words combined to make, I guess, a bunch of one-liners and maybe, well, actually even better, create a whole book or a series of them.
Well, actually, the funny thing is, when you write a book, you write in isolation. And I'm writing a book on connection, and so to write in isolation is kind of antithesis of what I'm saying. And so, I had been given the idea from one of my mentors to have a millennial perspective because I'm a Generation Xer. And I thought that's a great idea. He introduced me to some great connected millennials. And then they introduced me to some other connected people. And then I thought, oh, my God, I know a lot of connectors. And so I ended up curating my own connections and those that were shared with me by my connections. And the book has over 30 experts that are giving advice and insights into different aspects of these mindsets and of building these types of relationships. I even have somebody who has a course on connecting with influencers who's contributed to the book.
Amen. That is awesome right there. That is awesome indeed. And connecting with millennials. So how was that experience? I mean, the gap isn't really that too much wide from Gen X to millennials. I mean, it's only like really a few years. I mean, like probably, 10, depending on who you talk to?
Well, the truth is there used to be a Generation Y in the nomenclature, and Y has kind of gotten sucked up by the millennial generation and maybe a little bit of the X generation. I am in the heart of Generation X. The Generation Y was about a 10-year time frame from, I would say, the mid-'70s to the mid-'80s. But that mid-'70s to mid-'80s, those people who are now in their young 40s, and mid-30s or so, those people kind of got left, like they got left. There's no Generation Y talked about anymore. It's all millennials and X. And again, it was a small generation in terms of the number of years, because what happens with the generations and how we name them is really about the advancement of technology. It's why the silent generation is so large, why the baby boomer generation was so large, is because there wasn't a lot of advancement in technology. My husband and I are 4.5 years apart, and we are different generations based on technology. Because if you think about when he was in middle school, he had a computer. But I didn't have my first computer until I was in college. And so now he's a techie, and so he had one really young, but that really shows a difference in how we are raised, is what type of technology we had, and that's the differentiation of the generation. So, there's different things that resonate for different generations, and there's different principles and priorities of what's important. And I do think that there was this little lost generation of why that isn't really talked about anymore.
And then that just leaves you asking why. Oh, man. Yeah, and I guess one of those technologies is social media. So do you have a personal favorite? Because there's so many out there.
There are so many social media. I mean, like, there's thousands. And yes, I have a favorite. My favorite is LinkedIn. I usually say to people that you can get sucked in and lose a lot of time, that you want to think about who you want to connect with and where are those people. So Facebook has the largest audience, but it's also an aging audience. So it started when I was teaching at NYU. My students got me into it. So in the early 2000s, it was really in the universities. So if you think about where those students are 20 years later, it's going to an older generation, and the younger generation isn't really picking up on Facebook as much. If you have a visual business or industry, you want to be on Snapchat, you want to be on Instagram, you want to be on Pinterest. Those are more visual platforms. I think everybody should be on LinkedIn personally, because it is a professional platform for all, and it's really beautiful where you can see the connections. Your first level connection, your second level connection. This is who you have in common. You have this mutual group. You have this mutual following. So it really helps us understand how we are already connected. And gives us a basis to begin those conversations. So I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I invite everybody out there to connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm sure my LinkedIn will be in the show notes. And tell me which podcast you heard me on. So LinkedIn is my favorite. I say pick 3 at the most, and be present and be active and be engaged, because you can't be on all of them. And so be the places that you want to be and then engage there.
That's a good number, 3 to have, and LinkedIn being your favorite. That's actually a good one. And LinkedIn, I wouldn't say silently, but they're actually always building it up and making it better and better, really. Because, I mean, they had the LinkedIn TV thing for LinkedIn Live, similar to Facebook Live, but it's like, yeah, you get to connect with more professionals at a visual level, and folks love to see videos. I mean, people are on the internet more than TV, and just adding that aspect to it is like, oh man, learning is basically on steroids now.
Yeah, I didn't know they had LinkedIn Live. I post videos on LinkedIn, but they have a LinkedIn Live now?
Yeah, it was a couple months ago. A guest a few weeks ago mentioned how, I think it was like back in February, that you can actually go live on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I haven't tried it yet personally, but it's like, wow, you can actually do that? It's like, wow, okay, cool.
I didn't know that either. Learn something new.
Woohoo! Learning is on steroids. Yes, indeed. And as with all the social medias, and then of course the folks who you talk to outside of social media, how do you manage all of that, all those connections too? Because that can be one heck of another. It's a good problem to have, really. How do you manage the huge network?
Well, it's interesting. I always say that you want to increase the channels in which you're connected. So if you met face-to-face, also connect on LinkedIn. If you met online, is there an opportunity to have a phone call? So looking for more channels with which to communicate across will strengthen those bonds. I think that you have to find your own system and your own tools. I talk about different tools in the book around what can help you, and different ways, because we can also talk about the time management aspect of it. But you can use a CRM. I don't, but you can, to help manage and organize all those contacts. I just use Outlook, and when I talk to somebody, I will write notes in their contact card about things we talked about, or where we met, or when we met, or who introduced us. If they have a dog, because I love animals, if they have kids, anything like that. I've put spouses' names, and so that I can recall that information because I captured it. If I'm with somebody, I might write some of those things on the back of their card that tells me what to follow up on. If I am in a conversation with somebody and we say, oh, let's, touch base in a few months, I will go into my calendar and I'll put a note with their name on it, with a reference to the email that was written or something like that. So I make it really easy for myself, and I don't have to search about who is this person, Dom, and what did he want, and when did we talk last, and how do I get a hold of him? It's all right there, right in the to-do list, so to speak, in my Outlook.
And that is a wonderful outlook indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But yeah, you are right, though. That's actually classic right there. Just basically making sure you write the information on the back of their card of when you connected with them, if they still do the whole business card thing, and then just connecting with them on social media. And then the whole time management piece. Is there a specific way, I guess it probably is mentioned in the book, and where you just go deeper into, like, do you set aside like maybe 5 or 30 minutes a day with connecting? It's like making a list of like, okay, I should probably connect with this person on this project. I'll wait this person offer me a podcast interview. Like, is there a specific amount of time you set aside a week to actually catch up with certain folks?
Again, I think it's about finding time in your schedule. So everyone needs to find the way that works for them, whether it's the tool or the timing. I think there's a lot of underutilized time in our day and in our week that can be used for these light touches and these reach outs and these connection points. Your commuting time, if you're in a car, get on the phone. If you're on the train, you can send some emails, or the bus. If you are thinking about, for me, after lunch, I'm kind of in food coma. I like to I get tired. I'm not going to have brain work. I'm not going to produce content right after lunch. So that's a great time for me to do phone calls and chat and catch up, because I get re-energized by those conversations. If you think about the things that you do already, going to the gym, I've had conversations at the gym. I've had conversations in sweatpants after the gym, where we go grab a cup of coffee. I have had meetings walking dogs. I actually met somebody at the dog park that I ended up hiring, and she's working for me now.
Nice.
So I think if you think about the things that you already do and invite somebody to do them with you, then you are more efficient with your time.
Yeah, that's right, because networking is 24/7.
We're always networking. No matter where you are, networking is just another way of saying making friends, and that's what we do. If we're on the playground, or if we're at our religious affiliation services, wherever we might be, it's about connecting to those around you. And I was on the train on the way to New York City yesterday, and I look up, and every single person is on their phone. I mean, we're sitting in these row of seats where there's 6 seats across from another 6 seats. And when I looked up from my phone, because I was doing it too, every person was just looking down at their phone. There was no more conversations on the train, no more reading random people. And it was kind of sad, because, you used to just chat with people to entertain yourself, and now you have your phone.
Yep, the zombie apocalypse. The blue light zombie apocalypse. Probably can't even call them distraction grenades. It's like to get on a train, they pop the pin, just press the on button, and then boom.
Yeah, you don't even notice people around you anymore.
Yeah, and that can be dangerous. It's like, well, not just for safety, but also just to be able to connect with others and connect with strangers. I mean, that's really how you get the most out of life, just connecting with strangers.
Yeah, sometimes I was on a plane once, and I ended up sitting next to a woman from Amazon, and we just started chatting. And it wasn't necessarily that I was trying to land a business, but we just had this great conversation, and we then connected on LinkedIn, and we stayed in touch. And it's just those moments of I remember things she said to me. She gave me a concept that stuck with me about, what is your road, your plan to green, like green being accomplishment of your goal. And it was a great phrase, and it really stuck with me.
Yes, indeed. Being green, green bean. Oh, yeah, that's right. Make sure it's extra green. And extra big, too. And it's really beautiful, too, because it actually tied in with another mindset, connectors of conscientious. So if you're on your phone dead scrolling through life, then you're not conscious.
That's an interesting way to look at conscientiousness. And I think that is part of it. It's not the part I really talk about a lot, but I think it's an interesting twist. When I talk about being conscientious as a connector, I say that connectors do what they say they're going to do. They follow up and they follow through. And in order to be conscientious, you need to be really clear on what you're willing to say yes to and get real comfortable saying no. But, yes and no are not one-word answers, and that's one of the things I teach in the book is how to say yes and how to say no without putting a relationship at risk, and to understand when you want to do those things. And so I always say there's always a yes if and a yes after and a yes when and a yes with, but not just a plain old yes.
Oh, yeah, you're right about that. You say yes too much, and then next thing you know, your metaphorical well is empty, and you're basically out of energy.
Well, that's what happens, because when you're conscientious and you are following through and doing everything you say you're going to do, but you've said yes to too many things, you then do that at the the damage to yourself and your family. So to be conscientious is to be able to say no.
Oh, yeah.
I like that line. I might have to write that one down.
There you go. Write it down. It's a magic word.
My husband put it on my computer for like a year on a sticky note until it fell off and just said no. And it was a way of saying, Michelle, you got to say that word a little bit more often.
Oh, man. Yep. He probably knew exactly where to put it, too. He's like, all right, this is where a lot of these yeses are coming from. If I put no here, and she leaves it there, it'll get to her.
It did. It worked. I would often look at that word, and it was a way of giving myself permission. And I think everybody out there needs to give themselves permission to say no. And when you come up with guidelines for what you'll say yes to and what you'll say no to, it becomes a lot easier. So for me, I had guidelines of when I would do pro bono work, how many I would do, how many people I wanted in an audience if I were doing something pro bono. And so when somebody came to me and it didn't meet those criteria, I could say no, but then tell them how they could get a yes down the road. I could say, no, I can't do it for a group that size, but if you get another group together, please come back to me. And so that's a no but.
Ah, yes indeed. That's one of the buts you get to keep. Because some folks will be, I think it's like Tony Robbins, like, yeah, you got to take the butts out of your life or something like that. It's like, nah, in this case, it's like you got to be careful with that.
I'm with you. I tend to ban the buts. I always use and, but when it's in this situation, it can be effective.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Effective indeed. But yes, indeed. So, like, quite a classic question I like to ask every guest is, and that is if you were 25 in the current year with all of your knowledge and experience, and you now have this amazing network. So you're basically going back 3 years to the past. What advice would you give to yourself?
If I'm going back how many years in the past?
Yep, 3 years. You're 25 now.
I'm only 28. I love that because it's a lot more than 3 years for me to get back to 25. But if I was going back about 20 years and I had a great network already, or what I would say to my 25-year-old self, because I wasn't doing this, is two things. You get more with honey than with vinegar, because if people want to say yes to you, they'll find a way to say yes to you. So make them want to say yes, and that is through kindness and connection. And the other thing I would say is keep connecting, and keep connected.
Ah. Solid indeed. And the connected piece, that's actually great that you mentioned that piece, because yeah, get business cards, follow up, yeah, woo, and then nothing happens, and people forget about the connected part.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to stay connected. And in my first book, The 11 Laws of Likability, I talk about a lot of ways to stay in somebody's mind without getting in their face. So we can stay connected with light touches, and I'm sure you'll have that on your show notes as well. So thank you so much for having me on. I hope I hear from all of your listeners. Actually, the best way to for your listeners to find me is on my website, which is Michelle with 2 L's, Tillis, Tillis, Lederman, Lederman.com. From there, they can find my YouTube. I do these success shorty videos. They can find my blog. I have hundreds of free articles that I've written over the years. They can link into me. That's on there as well. And if they want to find out more about my book, they can go to theconnectorsadvantage.com.
Woohoo! Yes, today. Well, there you have it, folks. Go on out there, holla at the wonderful Michelle, connect with her, I should say, and snag a copy of her book. It's a wonderful book indeed. It'll help you take your ability to connect at a higher level. And not talking about weed here either, but it'll connect you at a higher level with wonderful folks and gives you 7 awesome mindsets, which is freaking fabulous indeed. So any other parting words for wonderful listeners, Michelle?
I loved your last question. Keep connecting and keep connected. And connect with me. How's that?
How's it going, you super special, awesome human? Since you made it to the end of this episode, it looks like you really enjoyed yourself. Since you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with at least 3 people in your network and tell them what you really liked about this episode. Heck, even shoot myself or the guest an email and let them know what you liked most about this interview, so that way they can stay inspired to keep pushing out great work.